everybody, and welcome to DC Fine Art. Today we are working on part 6 of this color pencil piece, and I'm sorry if I sound a little muffled. I have still got a little cold or a little congestion with all the change in weather. I guess over here I keep going in good weather and then going out of good weather. Either that or I keep the heater on too high, but it's definitely got me all stuffy. So in this um, video, we're going to be working on the chest. Right now I'm working on the little trim of the chest, and I'm trying to do this a little quickly because I mean it's it's a pretty big area that I'm going to be working on, and so I just kind of zoomed through it. But basically all I did was use like a cream, and I don't have all the pencils with me. I could actually take them out and tell you the colors, but there are so many colors that I used in so many different areas just to try and get this done, so that way we can move on to the little teacup and the hamster for the next video. I know, spoiler alert. But I went ahead and I erased some of my lines that I had, and then I went with my graphite that I had down, and I went ahead and put in some little chips and little rusty areas and little patches that's in that metal trim. And then I outlined my little screws, and I'm using basically blues, like really dark blues, like a dark indigo um, blues for the chest, at least for now, because I wanted to have that type of tone to it. I wanted to have a bluish tone to it. The little edge that you have on top of the line, like the little seam line right there, I went ahead and used like a cream or a white, just something, probably more of a creamy color because of the glow, like a yellowish color, yellow cream. I guess I'm coming up with these colors so weirdly, but I'm using like a yellowish type of color cream to do the outline with, and that's just because of like the candlelight, shining, it has that yellowish glow. So using the seam line as like a cream was the best way to do it. So I kind of zoomed it out a little bit further. I know you guys can't see as good as you could when it was zoomed up, but just to kind of show you the whole piece of what I'm working with, doing the trim all the way across. And I'm just using that dark indigo, and then I'm coming in with a darker, I think it's another dark indigo is what it is, with the Caran D'Ache luminance has like a darker indigo, and I'm kind of putting in some shadows underneath these flowers where it touches the trim, or at least where it's around that trim. But for the majority of the trim doing the blue, I used out of the Derwent lightfast range. Now I do this for a reason. I like to choose between my Derwent, and I think all of them were the Derwent lightfast and the Caran D'Ache luminance. So these two pencils I used in completing this. The Derwent lightfast is just such a creamy, it's a beautiful pencil. It's very creamy, and when you're working with it, I like to use it for a lot of my base layers because you can just kind of fill it in real quick, and as long as you put enough down still with the pencil, it's so much easier to blend out, and it's just amazing. So I love using those for like my base layers because of how creamy they are. And then I'll go back in with my Caran D'Ache luminance because they're a little bit harder of a pencil to where it's kind of like a mediocre, but it's more of a harder pencil to where I can put in a little bit more details using those. So here I am just using my dark indigo, going back over it again. Now around the edge of the trim, you got the left side and the right side. I'm going to have to darken that some, so I may go back in with my dark indigo from my Caran D'Ache luminance, going back in there just to darken that up on the edges. Now here I am with my OMS to blend, going around all those little rust marks and chips and stuff that I put in the metal, like just kind of going around them. I'm making sure that whenever I dip my brush in the OMS that I'm wiping it off at least once on the paper towel. That way I'm not dripping with it or anything. And then I'm going back through and blending it with my paper. And see, it comes out a really nice blue. Whenever you use that OMS, it really does pop out the color. Alright. There, I zoomed in just a little bit more closer just to kind of show you. Now with the trim, the metal trim that kind of flaps over the top of the chest, I went ahead and went with a black. So I do believe I used my Caran D'Ache luminance on this, a little bit more of a harder pencil to just kind of go. Actually, no, I went ahead and used my darker, what is that called? Oh my goodness, I'm losing my words. That is the Midnight Black. So I used the Midnight Black of the Derwent Lightfast to go ahead and go on top of that. Now I did go back over it with my Caran D'Ache luminance black pencil, but which I think that was it right there. But yeah, I made that more like a lot darker than the strip facing you. So it's just the way the angle of it is. It's a little bit darker. So I used Midnight Black first, that way it's easier to blend out, and then I used on top a Caran D'Ache luminance, that way I kind of seal it in. Use my OMS to blend, and now you can see where that creamy color that I used as a reflective, where the metal bends, that stands out a whole lot more. Now I'm kind of going into some of these rust spots. I'm just using some sepias and some oranges and some rusty, like little rusty colors, just to kind of throw into it. So just going back over with that. And then I'm using some of my dark indigo to go back in there and darken up some of the areas. Now I'm not going back over it completely. I'm not wanting to do that. I'm wanting to leave some of that lighter color where it kind of washed with the OMS and it made it a little bit lighter. I'm kind of leaving those spots in there, but I'm darkening up some areas around in throughout, I guess, the little trim, back and forth, just to kind of add some texture and like a metal kind of look where it's kind of bent or worn, or it's just older. And so that gives the reflectiveness of the metal, is just by throwing in some more darker colors in there, and then I blend out with the OMS just to kind of smooth out those areas. But I want to leave some of those lighter areas also, blending out those little bitty rust strips. And now I'm going back over with my Caran D'Ache luminance, it's still black, and going back over that little trim just to kind of fill in some of the areas that may have kind of washed with the OMS a little bit. And now I'm working on the little screws. Now they're just little old rusty screws. So I'm using in between where the screwdriver would go to fit in there. I'm kind of using like a rusty kind of color brown. And then I'm filling in the screw as a black screw. So on the head of the screw, I'm actually putting in some black. And I'll end up going back around that too. Filling in a little bit more rusty areas and the little chips. And going back over that. So there's a little bit close up of it. And you can kind of see where the darks and the lights just kind of go in and out to make that look realistic, more of a metal type of look. So now we're going to go in here, and I chose this color, went ahead and worked with some reds. And I chose red because my daughter has been on my mind a lot for her. And I mean, I can't explain to you, but how I feel on that. But yeah, she's been on my mind so much, like just for the holidays and everything, that uh, I always miss her whenever she leaves. But I went ahead and chose the color red for this, and her favorite color is red. So I wanted to go ahead and make this chest out to be red instead of, I was thinking like blue or something else that this chest could be. The reference photo, it was just a old brown chest, so, and a black trim. So I definitely changed this up quite a bit, or at least it definitely looks like it. But I went ahead and chose this color, and I didn't know what it was going to look like. I just knew that I wanted to use my daughter's favorite color. Like, I didn't care actually what it was going to look like. I actually, at this point, I just did not care. I just went ahead and chose the color red just because of my daughter. And I was super amazed just how this turned out. Like, I actually, the color, I absolutely love it. I did add some like deep rose reds and this darker like purpley red for any of the shadows. So I threw those dark purpley reds in there, and then I went over it with some of my, and I used both the Derwent Lightfast and the Caran D'Ache luminance in this. So both the two pencils I used, and then I used like a kind of like a lighter red, but it's not like a deep red. I mean, it's well, actually, it's probably the dark one of the darker reds, but it's not like a bright red. So I went in and used my purple reds, and then actually the purplish red may have been from the Derwent Lightfast. And then I went ahead and where it's closest to the candle in this area, where it's shining back behind these flowers, I went ahead and used some of my lighter, brighter reds. So even though it came out, and if you do anything in red, or at least this type of color of reds, like the purples and the more of the deeper, darker reds, sometimes whenever you use OMS on this, and you'll be able to see it once I get done with this, I'm just adding in a lot of the shadows. The shadows are usually, the darker reds or the purpley reds. And then if I want to go a little bit deeper, then I'll use like the nightshade, which is like purple, a really, really dark purple out of the Caran D'Ache luminance to add in a little bit more of a darker shade. And then if I needed to go to black, that would be at the end, and it would be very minute. It would just be just for the edges or where it's like pitch black. But when I go in here and I'm going to use OMS, which I'm going in here and doing some of the little areas, you'll see that it will come out looking a little bit more pink, or a pinkish kind of purple, or like kind of like a fuchsia looking color. Is some of the areas you may actually get it washed out. The purples will stand out as purple. I mean, it's going to look a little weird with it being like this purpley purple color and this fuchsia kind of color. I don't know if that makes sense to you, and that's only because whenever you're using the OMS, it kind of pops out those colors, it kind of thins them out, spreads them out by using the OMS. And see how purple this looks? I mean, it looks purple. And of course, whenever I'm going through with the OMS on this part, it kind of stands out as like a really brightish kind of pink color. And then I go around the color, or around where the shadowy areas is, and it's still like a purpley color. And I'm wanting it red, But whenever I go back over it a second time, that's gonna change it all up. So here I'm just going to do the bottom the same way I did the top. I'm going to make both corners dark, and I know I'm kind of out of frame on this, but it's going to be the same kind of thing as what I'm doing on the top portion. But I'm making it dark on one side. I'm making this top by the trim is going to be a little darker too with a shadow. So that way that kind of stands out that there's just a slight shadow on that little edge of the trim. And then the center is going to be a little bit lighter, or have those brighter colors of the reds in there. And then as I go down, it's going to have more of the darker colors, like it starts getting darker again. So it's just the values of where I'm going with. I'm using OMS to go ahead and blend this little part out, and of course you can see that purple color kind of showing through, and I'm wanting it to be a red chest. Don't worry about that. Whenever you go back over it the second time, you can definitely add those in, like more reds in, and it's definitely going to change up a little bit. So it's going to work out, so don't panic. It is definitely going to look good. So right now, see what it looks like. It has that pinkish glow purple. Pink and purple is what it looks like. So here comes the second layer. Now I'm using a little bit more of a brighter red in this, like a deep cherry red. I mean, it's like red. And I'm going to go back over the top of this. Now look how it changes it up. When you go back over the top of it with this red and you're going over even the shadows, like the purple areas that you had the shadows, when you go back over it with the red, that purple still, the shadowy part still shows through that red, and it makes it so much smoother of a shadow. It really does look like it's still a red chest, but just the shadow. So that purple does work. It's just you have to go over the top of it again with more of a brighter red, or the red kind of color. So here I'm going to go over all of this. Now I am using a little bit brighter of a red with going in this area. And usually if you want, I mean, it's kind of like working backwards. Whenever I worked with a little bit darker of a purple and then did like a purpley color and then a darker red that kind of looked like a fuchsia, but then I took a red and put over it, like a brighter red and put over it. I mean, if you're wanting it to be a bright red chest, then you wouldn't want to do it this way. You wouldn't. You would want to start out with your brighter colors if you're wanting it to be a really bright chest. But since this chest is more of in the dark, you've got a candlelight lit, I wanted to be more of a rich, more smoother, darker tone. And there I'm just kind of finalizing that edge line with the ruler, making it a little bit straighter of a line. But if you're wanting it to be more of a richer, darker chest, and I didn't want it to be super, super bright, then this is the way I had to do it, to where I didn't want those pencils to just stand out super bright red. I wanted it to be soft and subtle and be in the shadows of a red chest. So that's why I went ahead and used those purples. I used those darker reds first, and then whenever I used the OMS, I was able to go back on top of it with a brighter red, and it didn't get that bright. It brightened it a little bit to where it smoothed all those shadows out, but it didn't like go the full extent of how bright that red would be. So yeah, there's different ways of doing this. I mean, I know a lot of people wonder if you should work dark to light, light to dark. In this case here, I went with my darker colors, or at least my darker reds or my fuchsias, and went on top of it with a brighter color, because I didn't want it that bright, but I wanted it a little brighter. So I didn't want to make it like in your face bright. So here I'm going over it, the same kind of pencil, going over those shadows also. And then I switched over to a darker red, a little bit darker of a red, when going around this area here where the flowers are. With the shadows, I just kind of changed it up. Now here's my brighter red, going back over some of this area. Then I switched over real quick to a darker red, just that quick. Oh, this speed thing goes really quick, but yeah. So I'm working back and forth between the two pencils. And then going over all those purples and everything. Now here I am kind of adjusting those shadows, putting those shadows back in, making them darker. And see, whenever I'm looking at these flowers, now when we did the flowers before, I told you guys that, I have them bright, but once you add in the background, whatever background you're deciding to do, it could make your flowers look a little bit stand out way too much. And that's just because at first you're doing them and you think that just because of the colors you're laying down, you're like, okay, maybe it's not bright enough. Maybe it's not bright enough. Maybe I need to make it brighter. Well, I only went over these flowers enough to where I gave them, whatever I needed, but I didn't blend them out with OMS. I didn't go back in and add in really deep dark shadows because I wasn't for sure yet. I wanted to make sure I put in my background first and readjust it that way I can readjust it the proper way to do, because I didn't know I thought maybe I was gonna do a blue chest. But when I decided to pick this red chest out, it kind of has an effect on those flowers too, you know? So I went back in and adjusted these flowers. So there's the whole image of the chest. We got that blended out, and I blended out all the reds again. Now here I am going to go ahead and darken underneath this candle too, because I didn't do that neither. I didn't finish that up the last time. So I'm going back in with my blacks for the top, and then after I get done with using some of my black, when I say black colors, then I go back in underneath and I'm using like a really dark brown, like dark flesh brown, just a really dark brown on the bottom with a black underneath the seam line. So here I zoomed in on these flowers. These flowers need to be readjusted. Like I said, you know, once you get that background done, you may have to go back and readjust these flowers. So I'm adding in some really, I mean, these are like some oranges, some kind of like a, I would say almost like a pink kind of color. It's like a reddish pinkish kind of color. So I'm throwing those colors in, like more of the reddish kind of tone, because of the reds around the chest and the red colors. I wanted to kind of have something that matched the chest in a way, like kind of went with each other. So I put in some reds and some oranges, and then I used my dark, my nightshade out of my Caran D'Ache luminance to add in the deep darker colors to these flowers, like the really deep rich dark shadows. So yes, these flowers did need to be readjusted, but I'm glad that I left enough, you know, texture and everything on these flowers to where I can go back in and make the adjustments needed once I get the background done. Otherwise, they would look way too washed out and just too yellow, and there was really not as much life as I wanted in these flowers as what it could be with this red chest being added. So yes, everything's got to fit together. At least I'm trying to make them all fit together. So adding in my darks, adding in my shadows, adding in my oranges and reds. And it just definitely makes 100% difference. There's some of the dark indigo, or the nightshade, sorry, nightshade. Some oranges and some reds. Then I'll go back through here, add a little bit of shadow to one side of those little buds. And I'll work around each one of these flowers, and I may blend them out just a little bit in some areas just to kind of smooth up some of the pencil marks, but I don't want to take away all the pencil marks because I actually do like the texture and the color, the texture of the pencil just a little bit. And also, if you guys, any of you guys are new here, please click the like and subscribe on this channel. It definitely helps me out. It definitely helps the channel grow, and definitely helps YouTube put the channel out there for everyone to see. If there is, like, I guess their algorithm likes to look for those likes and subscribes in order to show your video out there. But definitely anything helps. And if you're new here, hi, welcome to the channel. And for all the ones that have been with me and watching me and subscribed to me this whole time, welcome back. Super excited that we are come this far with this piece, and I can't wait till we do the final of this piece. It has definitely been a long one, but color pencil does take a while to do. And I can't wait to jump into that little teapot and the little hamster. I got my colors picked out, just I have not started it yet, so super excited. Now here I'm just kind of toning up this plate. Like I said, I didn't actually finish the plate, so I went back in and adjusted everything and added in my second layer on it. Alright, well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and just remember to click the like and subscribe, and I'll see you all next Thursday. Bye, you guys.